This video is a continuation from the previous. Okay, so that's some of my work that I did prior to what I'm about to show you next. Let me see. Make sure I've closed the stuff that I don't need that one. We already looked at that. Okay. I wanted to show you that first, just to kind of show you that I mostly had not done portraiture. So 2 years ago, actually not quite yet, almost 2 years ago, we got a new president, and there needed to be a photo taken of him for the for a announcement that was being done, and I took it. And so I'm going to show you. What's this? Okay, so this is Dr. Holston. He's the college president. And Mr. Thomas set up the lighting, and I took the pictures. And I'm going to show you, there are only 38 in this folder. I think that's all I took. He's extremely photogenic. That's another thing to talk about. Sometimes you take pictures of people and they are very photogenic, and you can take a couple shots of them, and 5 shots, 6 shots, 10 shots, and get something great. Other times, I actually shot someone who wanted their portrait done right before him, and I didn't get a single good shot out of 50. And I will tell you that it was because the lighting was set up for Dr. Holston, who is a black man with black hair wearing a gray suit. And we lit it for Dr. Holston, knowing that that's who we were going to be photographing, and that was going to be his, right? And the person that we were shooting had light hair. And the light just caught his hair on fire, and it didn't work. Also, the lighting was not good it just wasn't good for that person. So you always want to make sure, and we're going to learn about lighting, but you always want to make sure that your lighting works for the person you're shooting, and adjust it if you're going to be shooting anyone else. I just wasn't aware that we were going to be shooting the other person. So what ended up happening was we got some great shots of Dr. Holston. So in here we're using a key light, a backlight, which is hair light backlight. You'll see those terms. I sometimes call it hair light, sometimes call it backlight. Just depends on the context. Excuse me. And we actually were using a deflector for the fill. When you're shooting someone, you need a main light, and you can kind of see the main light hitting with the specular highlights on his face. You need a main light, and then you want to fill in the sides with a lighter light. And again, we're going to cover this in more detail, but I just kind of want to point out what we did here. So this was the very first shot that I took of him, and he wasn't smiling, and I mean, it's fine, it's a good shot. But what I want you to notice is, in his face, how different each image looks from shot to shot. See? I mean, he is the same person, he was just sitting there. What happens when you're photographing someone is they blink, you have all these facial muscles, they twitch, people swallow saliva, they breathe. So you actually have all these micro movements that happen in a face that can turn. I mean, that last one was terrible. This one is pretty good. I mean, you'll see the one. I'll show you the one that got selected and the one that got published. Okay, so and we did different exposures. Okay, so here we had him smile, and you see that for him changed everything. Here he kind of looks like a grump. And he even said he didn't like pictures of him not smiling. He smiles and he just lights up, right? That is just a beautiful photo, and I actually think that might be the one that got selected. He's got a great sense of humor. Okay, so then we got these photos. And people will initially smile, and you can see this here, right? That was a genuine, official, legitimate smile. We were talking, we were joking. He's very funny. It was fun. We were having a good time. It was a legitimate smile. And then he was just holding it for the camera, and you see a difference. You see a difference in a person's face. So having a good rapport with the people you're taking photographs of, having a conversation with them, making them feel comfortable and relaxed, giving them very clear direction. I always tell people to look at the top of the camera, not into the lens. And it just makes a difference in their eyes and the way the camera takes pictures of them. We pose people. You see how he's facing, he's not facing straight at me. He's facing at an angle. We had him seated at an angle and then turned his head back to look at us. And if people feel uncomfortable or awkward, it usually is a good sign it's a good pose. Okay, so we had all these photos, and I just very quickly show you. They all look different just because of those micro changes to someone's face. Okay, so this is the one that got published right there. Right. So this was actually my first time doing portraiture in a studio ever, and I got published. Not bad, huh? But you can make a career out of doing portraits. If you like doing portraits, you can make a career doing that. I just Googled portraiture and clicked on photography in Google, and you can see there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can photograph a person to record them. Most often when we think of portraits, we think of shots like this where the person's looking directly into the camera. Usually you want the person or animal to have eye contact with the camera, but I hate to say it has to be this way ever. Even though we have rules, we can break them if we do them in a way that still honors and respects the principles and elements themselves. And let's see. I already showed you my cat, right? She was not looking at the camera, but you could still see her eyes. You need to see the eyes in order for it to be portraiture. But they don't have to be looking at you. That's a portrait, and he's looking off camera. Oops, can you guys see that one? I just get so excited. I start talking about stuff, and I don't realize if it's in frame or not. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so he's not even looking at the camera, but that is a portrait. This is a very famous portrait taken of a young girl in Pakistan. And he actually went back later and took a photo of her many, many years later. And she still had the bright green eyes. Let's see. Often we like to take portraits of people that are different from the people that are around us. It shrinks the world. It lets people. All right, so here's a fact. The human brain is wired such that you cannot care about 1 million people. You can care about one person at a time, maybe a few. So the most effective campaigns for raising awareness are focused on a single individual, because it's easy to get to know and care about one person. It's impossible to care about 1 million faceless, nameless, personalityless people or animals. This looks pretty cool. Look at this one. And this is done lighting with 2 different colored lights. There's more than 2 lights to do this. There's a main key light that's light blue, and then they've got 2 fill lights. This one's lighter on the right side than on the left side. And they got 2 red lights on either side to create that interesting pattern. Quite often people will pay for family portraits. That's another way. If you really like children, they're very difficult to photograph from anyone I've ever spoken to who has worked with them. If you're good with kids, and I think that I don't know. I don't even know what that means, honestly. But if you're good with kids, or you just like them, and I think that helps. But if you're good with kids, and there are people who are, that could be a career path you could take. That's beautiful. It's she's looking at the camera, so it's this portrait, but it's got her hand in it, and she's kind of in motion, and I guess they're probably blowing her hair with a fan to get her hair to fly like that. That's just really beautiful. Oops. Ooh, that's nice. Look at that one. You can be very creative in your lighting. A lot of really creative things you can do. And the great thing about the internet is there are all kinds of articles where people will share. Oh, that was Pinterest. Where people will share what they've done with you. So when I first started teaching, it was considered taboo to recommend students go watch YouTube videos. Now, we have our own YouTube channel. So it's come a very long way in the 13 years since I first got into education, for how YouTube and the internet is seen as a very legitimate source for information. I Google stuff all the time. It's just this vast library. Because I don't know if any of you guys had to do this, but when I was a kid, you had to memorize the Dewey Decimal System, get somebody to drive you to the library, lose your mind trying to find the book, or at least where the book was supposed to be, get there, and someone else had checked it out. And then what did you do? I mean, that's used to be how we used to communicate knowledge, through books. But now you have the internet. Of course, you also have to be careful because there's a lot of misinformation out there. But not so much on photography. So there's a lot you could find out there. A lot of great articles. Okay, so we're going to end this video here and this series. There are a lot of other resources that I've put for you in Blackboard, and as well as your textbook covers Portraiture. Actually, the author of your book, he was a model and he's a photographer, and his wife is a model and photographer. So he's got a lot of really great tips for shooting portraiture.